today there's been an article that was published about five sauce that a lot of people are angry over. And I mean, by now it's like midnight and, well, the day after Christmas. So the majority of people have already seen it, but they said a lot of like controversial things that people might feel have like rubbed them the wrong way, but they can't really explain why or like figure out why. So we figured that it would be important to jump in and kind of explain why we think that some of the things that they said were very wrong and harmful to their fan base, and why a lot of anger is almost justified, and why they really should apologize or figure out some way to try to fix this, or else it could be detrimental to like their continued career. And a lot of people are really upset, but there's still a lot of people defending them, and we think that that could be an issue. So we're just gonna jump right in and tell you like what we think is messed
Okay,
up.
so a huge thing that really bothered me about this interview was that they made a comment about YouTubers being at the AMAs, which I mean, it was a valid I mean, I understand when they're upset. YouTubers aren't music makers, and it was the American Music Awards, which that's okay. But they said it in a way that made YouTube seem not valid. And I would just like to point out that that's very big headed and it's just rude. And they were like, why are they here? But why are you here? What gives you the right? They have a fan base, they have a following, they have a reason to be there. Just like you do. You were invited, they were invited. So that was it's just unnecessary. Um, Later in the article, it says something about Luke's girlfriend, who is apparently an internet personality, which means it's like basically a YouTuber. So they're like, yeah, YouTubers suck, but also I'm gonna date one. So make up your mind, Luke, okay? And another thing was that they actually started out on YouTube, and they would not be the band they are today without YouTube. I mean, it doesn't make sense because they literally found them on YouTube. So they're just being detrimental to themselves.
I'm gonna talk about Callum's remarks about fan fiction. So what was said in the article was kind of specific and it made sense. Like, obviously when you're reading something about yourself that's like bondage or weird cross-dressing, like that is kind of odd. Like if I were to read something about myself, I'd be really vaguely creeped out, and that makes sense. But if you're talking about fan fiction as a whole being absolute crap, that's kind of like rude and very unnecessary. Fanfiction can create a safe space for people, like trying to figure things out. Like maybe you're writing something about like Callum and Michael totally dating, and it's not really written for them. Like no one really writes a fan fiction thinking, "Oh my God, Callum Hood, you need to read this." It's like fan culture, and it's a safe space for people to express themselves and like learn about your own sexuality and make friends. Like maybe if you read a fan fiction, you would tweet them and say like, "I love you so much," and then they become your friend and you talk every day. Like it's just really nice, and bashing fans for doing that isn't really the best way to go about things. And I understand saying like, "Oh, it's creepy," but it's not going to go away. So I don't really get why it needed to be touched on. So honestly, I understand saying like I don't want to associate myself with reading this about myself because I find it weird, and that makes sense to me, like saying that. But if you're attacking this specific, like almost, I guess, art form, then that's just rude, and I would be bothered if I was like a writer of five sauce fan fiction, I guess. Now, the thing that really bothered me was what Ashton was talking about, like, trying not to be a boy band. Like, we 75% of the time we're totally trying to prove that we're a real band. Like, first of all, I just want to say, like, why do you think boy bands are so horrible? Look at the success and look at what teenage girls have done with boy bands. Like, just using One Direction as an example, that, like, Niall sitting right there. Fans have sent them across the world to help people, and there's been funds started, and it's like really nice, and a bunch of girls have become friends through that, and like you bond and you have your first experiences and you go to your first concert and you're with your friends and you're screaming along to the lyrics at midnight and your mom's yelling you to shut up, and that's like amazing for some people, and they got that feeling from like real bands, but like those people get that same feeling from boy bands. So it's really rude to even consider that they're not legitimate. And I understand that it's like, oh, well, they don't play their own instruments and stuff like that. The emotions that people feel for them are real. They compared themselves to the Beatles, and a lot of people consider them a boy band, which is just kind of like, dude, like, do you know who their fan base was? Beatlemania, they were bashed too, just in the same way you're bashing boy band fans now. Like, that's just kind of ironic. And overall, invalidating boy bands solely because of their main fan base being teenage girls is so petty. Like, I am so over people saying, oh, you're not a real band, you only have 12-year-old girls at your concerts. Like, first of all, that's really true. And even if it was, that's great. If you can connect all these like young, passionate girls who are willing to spend money on you, willing to protect you, willing to call people out for simply like making fun of a dimple on your cheek, then like that is amazing that you can instill that type of like passion in someone at such a young age. And I'm just really over the like internalized misogyny that comes with it. So overall, I would just say please stop underestimating teenage girls and be grateful and respectful to those who give you what you have, because as much as you say, oh, I love that I'm seeing those 5 teenage boys in the audience lately, like that's amazing. Like, yes, you should aspire to wider audiences, but you also need to be respectful to those who have already gotten you where you are, and by acting as though you're just waiting for a wider audience so that you can drop them isn't really the way to go about that. Like, Ashton has a little sister who's watching this, and I know he probably doesn't think that he's doing this, but when you say, like, oh, we really want to be seen by a wider audience, and oh, we're more excited about the 5 boys in the crowd than the 70,000 girls in the crowd, that's like really saying something to her about her interests. And like, maybe you are more girl based now, and you kind of are. Like, the majority of your fans are girls, but that doesn't need to be a bad thing. And by saying that's a bad thing, that can rub off on your younger siblings. And like, I highly doubt he would ever like bash one of her interests like legitimately, and it's just kind of a bad example, and as a big brother I would expect more.
Luke was a very large contributor and why people are upset about this. Now, I personally do not like Luke at all. He has in the past made comments about like how boys shouldn't wear nail polish, and I thought that was it's just annoying. He's just an annoying person in general. That is my personal opinion. But he has proved to be a pretty crappy person. So, in the article that was published, he made a comment and he was like, he kept talking about how they used to hook up with fans at bars that they meet, which, okay, consensual sex is awesome. Like, if you are of age and it is consensual, you do your thing. Like, that is great. What is not great is taking advantage of young girls. And the way that he phrased it made it sound like an unfair power structure where he was taking advantage of these girls, which is not okay. And I understand that he was speaking for the whole band, which is disgusting, and they should have worded it a different way, or they should have not talked about it, because obviously they don't do it anymore. And sharing this with their very large fan base of teenage girls is not okay. It is influential, it is disgusting, and he needs to apologize for it.
So if someone actually influential is watching this, like, 5 seconds of summer or whatever, our main points that we want to get across would be, over all of this, is don't bash your fans. Like, you're really nice online with your midnight tweets about how much you love us, and after we win you awards, being like, OMG, we are so grateful. That's amazing, but then real interviewers ask you things. The second you're prompted, you're ready to demean them and say that you're looking for a wider audience and saying that you don't want to be considered as a boy band and you want to be a real band and all these different things. And like, oh, I'm not just for young girls. Because the thing that you need to realize is that young girls are an amazing demographic and they understand a lot more than you guys apparently think that they do. Not to bring up previous dirt, but they understand drum solos and they understand guitar riffs and they get lyrics and they feel things and they have the same real emotions that you guys did when you were admiring bands at the same age of these girls. And as soon as you can realize how valuable they are, then a lot of this talk about, oh, we just want to be seen as real will hopefully go away. And secondly, the other thing that we really would like for them to know would be that instead of complaining about how unrecognized you are, how you're just seen as a boy band, and how you want to be seen as a real band, an article like this would be a great way to do that, but instead it turned into this. So instead of complaining about it, there has to be a reason for you guys to be taken seriously. Sounds Good Feels Good was a really good start and a really good album, and Jet Black Heart was a really nice video because it had representation of all different fans with all different races and disabilities and all different things. So it's amazing. So you take those good things and you run with it, and you gotta focus on the music and the fans and the new tour, and maybe throw in some of the weird questions like, oh, Luke Hemmings, what's your favorite food? Those are maybe boring for you, but they're fun and it's nice. But bragging about sleeping with tons of girls when you were younger and complaining about being seen as a boy band is not the way to get you to the point of being taken seriously by wider audiences and genuine music critics and the fan base you're trying to reach. Basically, we would just be saying, do something great. You're good singers, you got the music talent, so use that and focus on that and run with it instead of bashing people.
I just wanted to throw in that Michael, he's lovely. He is doing his best, and I am very proud of him, and I have no complaints about that boy. His statements in that article, I mean, I'm very proud of him dealing with his mental health. He deserves all the happiness in the world, and he deserves a band that won't spew out problematic shit.
So I really hope this video didn't seem too sloppy. It was edited at midnight on Christmas, but I feel like it really needed to be said to explain why people are getting so upset about this type of issue. And a lot of people still are saying that it's not a big deal because, look, Michael's come on and Luke's come on, and they've come to say that they wish that other things they had said had been more touched on, except that doesn't change the fact that they still did say what they did, and they used the interview that could have been used to reach a broader audience like they wanted. They used it to complain about not being a real band, make fun of fan fiction, and brag about sleeping with groupies. And also, in the end, it's about the music, and the music was hardly even mentioned. Thanks for watching anyway, and putting up with this rambling.